So John MacArthur played a huge role in a lot of people's lives, including myself. A lot of people on the internet have already shared their tributes to John MacArthur, but have also rightly credited all of his work to God, because God is sovereign in all things and has predestined the work that we are to walk in. And Wretched Radio and what Todd Friel said on his latest Wretched Radio podcast was very opened my eyes, and that is that John MacArthur was an answered prayer from probably some people from the 1800s in the Great or in the 19 or whatever it's the case. He was an answered prayer to be uncompromising and just a soldier for the truth. He didn't compromise or waver in any scenario when it came to the Bible. And even though he came into the scriptures with a presupposition in his framework, what he found to be convicting and what he found to be truth, he never wavered. Even if other brothers disagreed, he would still fight for what he truly believed, what the word was telling. Well, I'd like to go back to what really impacted my life and how God used him to reach me, a once lost soul, thinking he was saved, but truly he wasn't. Back in 2022, during summer vacation, I was just finished up my first year at University of Nevada, Reno, and my dad was constantly listening to a radio station with a preacher that was stern and yet precise and is always in the text. But I didn't really want to listen. But I remembered the voice. I remembered, and I didn't really care to listen to it at the point. So that was the first introduction to John MacArthur, even though I never knew his name and I never really paid attention to his preaching. It wasn't until 2023, I was having a very low light of a day in college. I was talking to my dad because I just heard a video on YouTube from this young gentleman named Daily Disciple on there, basically exegeting Matthew 7, where it said, Lord, Lord, did I do this in your name? Did I do that in your name? And Jesus says, I never knew you, depart from me, you worker of iniquity. And that really opened my eyes, because the guy who was doing the YouTube video faithfully interpreted it as saying, whoever doesn't do the will of God, are you truly saved? Are you truly a believer? And I called my dad, and my dad directed me to Grace to You. And that is when I first understood that the Bible he gave me back in December of 2022 was John MacArthur's study Bible, and that the preacher that he was listening to back then was John MacArthur. And I finally gave him a listen. I thought it was truly convicting, truly just, whoa, this really is something to pay attention to. I'd never heard somebody preach like this before, right from the scriptures, and he was uncompromising, and that really hooked me. It hooked me then, even when I was an unconverted believer. I believed that God was regenerating my soul at the time, but I never truly understood the gospel. I hadn't listened to him consistently since that time, but it definitely didn't exit out of my mind. I knew who John MacArthur was, and I was starting to get flooded with recommendations of his sermons, but also his YouTube people who did YouTube shorts and clips of him speaking. But what really was the final thing was when I was at work, lunchtime, and I was scrolling through YouTube shorts, doom scrolling, and I came across John MacArthur on the Kirk Cameron show. And he perfectly exegeted 2 Corinthians 5:21, which perfectly represented the gospel, and I was blown away. I got chills. That was the first time that ever happened to me. And I know I'm not all feely, but after that, it wasn't the same. And I was truly embedded into the Word of God. And John MacArthur exegeted it. And he's the reason why most are on the path of this reformed soteriology view. And when I say that John MacArthur is responsible, I'm saying that God is responsible. That he used MacArthur in a huge way. And I saw how he worked at the Shepherds Conference, of how many lives he's impacted all across the world, how many people he's encouraged into the mission field, and also in the under shepherding flocks of their own in their local area. So I want to show you that Kirk Cameron clip of John MacArthur and him and how he exegeted 2 Corinthians 5:21, because this truly changed my life.
The greatest gospel verse in the Bible, 2 Corinthians 5:21. He made him who knew no sin, sin for us, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. Let me unpack those 15 Greek words. He, God, made Jesus sin. What do you mean he made Jesus sin? Only in one sense. He treated him as if he had committed every sin ever committed by every person who would ever believe, though in fact he committed none of them. Hanging on the cross, he was wholly harmless, undefiled. Hanging on the cross, he was a spotless lamb. He was never for a split second a sinner. He is holy God on the cross. But God is treating him, I'll put it more practically, as if he lived my life. God punished Jesus for my sin, turns right around and treats me as if I lived his life. That's the great doctrine of substitution, and on that doctrine turned the whole Reformation of the church. That is the heart of the gospel. And what you get is complete forgiveness, covered by the righteousness of Jesus Christ. When he looks at the cross, he sees you. When he looks at you, he sees Christ.
If there is one thing in my life I want to make sure I understand, that's it. It is the gospel.